In the fall of 1951, Dr. Peter McFarland came into my office. He was the head of the St. Paul Union Gospel Mission and a great mission man. He asked if I would take the responsibility of organizing a Union Gospel mission for Spokane. Shortly after, I invited 12 businessmen, friends, as my guests to dinner in a private room in the old Oasis restaurant. Jimmy Walbrink of Yakima was there, and he told the story of his conversion from a drunkard in the Yakima mission. It was a touching narrative. Afterwards, I asked all who would be willing to serve as a member of Board of Trustees for a non-profit corporation to function as the Spokane Union Gospel Mission to raise their hands. And all agreed. We had meetings each night in a little mission on Stevens Street that was run by a Presbyterian woman, Bonnie Martin, who wanted to retire. We had churches and people, each responsible for putting in a service at the mission one day a month. We needed a superintendent. And one day a man named Willard Clark came to see me, and he said that he'd like to be our superintendent. I asked him what he knew about running a mission, and he said nothing. And I told him we didn't either, but we would put him on at $50 a week. The first thing Clark did was to locate an upstairs room across the street. It was an old speakeasy which had a range in it. Here, after the service at the mission, we invited all the men who were hungry to come, and we would feed them as long as food lasted. They came. They didn't want to leave, so many of them slept on the floor. They said it was better than sleeping in a boxcar. This went on for a while, but we knew that we had to have better accommodations. Willard Clark discovered a building on the corner of Brown and Trent, our present mission. We found we could buy it for $68,000, $17,000 down, and the balance at $300 a month at 5%. We signed an option to buy the building when we only had $28 in the treasury. Clark was an experienced builder. He gathered up on Skid Row fellows who were alcoholics, but also many of them were carpenters and plumbers and painters and electricians. And in a few weeks we were open for business, and had 300 present at our dedication service. These were rich days of experience when we often had to have a prayer meeting to get money to pay our bills. Food, bedding, cots, and pews came from everywhere. Churches and business firms alike were wonderful to us. The miracle of the mission was the talk of the town. The wife of one of the board members had been dinging me for some time to start a women's organization. I brushed her off as long as I could, and I finally one day said, "Go ahead and start something." As many as 200 attend their monthly meetings at the mission. Now, whenever the mission board has a problem too big for us, we just pass it on to the women's auxiliary. And they do it so easily that we're embarrassed. In the fullness of time, as the Bible says, we decided we should have a women's department. In 1971, we found a building, the old Lindsay Hall, a nurse's home in the old St. Luke's Hospital complex. We found that we could buy it for $31,000. We went to the Ogden Trust and were told that they were liquidating their fund and had only a little left. We appeared before their board and were given the amount we needed, and it was suggested that we call the building Ogden Hall. Since then, we have received regular and generous help from the Comstock Foundation for equipment, repairs, and so forth. This brings us pretty well up to date. Perhaps in 25 years from now, you can hear the rest of the story.
When Albert Aaron threw out the challenge to return in 25 years to hear the next part of the story, I never dreamed I'd be the one telling it. Hi, I'm Greg Hatch, President of the Board of Directors since 1988. I've been around the mission all my life because my dad, Jack Hatch, served on the board for over 35 years and was president for 4 years after Albert Aaron retired. My childhood memories include visions of the original building, chapel services, and long dinner lines. I feel greatly blessed by God to be the second generation serving the mission. So here it is, the story of the 25 years since 1976. In the late 70s, God opened the Spokane County Jail and then Juvenile Detention Center to ministry through Union Gospel Mission leadership. Though we're not allowed to go in with cameras, I want to assure you that thousands of men, women, and juveniles have heard the gospel and received counseling through our staff and volunteers over the last 25 years. By 1981, both Anna Ogden Hall and the mission had grown dramatically and were filled to capacity. It was especially crowded at the men's mission. All the beds were taken and 50 mattresses were purchased for sleeping on the floor. Everything overflowed. The chapel, the day room, the dining room. Only donated food kept pace with the accelerated demand for services. The board began looking for property to expand. The Broadway Splicing Building near the Spokane River at Trenton, Erie went up for sale and we bought it. Extensive remodeling began, funded by estates, foundations, and generous individuals. By May 1990, homeless men were sleeping in a beautiful new building. The very next year, 1991, wonderful property along the Spokane River was offered to the board by a generous donor at far below its market value. With development, it would make a great youth camp. Danny Beard had opened our first summer camp for at-risk juveniles in 1988, but we always rented property. By 1992, through the sale of the old mission building, the board moved to purchase the property for immediate use. Each week of camp was very small. Expansion and future development would have to be on hold, however, until after Anna Ogden Hall was completed. Spokane's fast-growing population of homeless women and children, due to increased domestic violence and drug addiction, was creating great strain at Anna Ogden Hall. During 2 winters, overcrowding was temporarily relieved by moving women into the old mission building. Then, miraculously, 3 lots adjacent to Ogden opened for sale, creating the possibility for expansion. Houses were moved off and construction began in September 1995. After a year of building and remodeling, Anna Ogden Hall had doubled in size. On October 11, 1996, the charming women's facility we call a sanctuary was dedicated for God's use. Since then, these new and improved facilities have been sites for dramatically increased ministry to homeless men, women, and children. We now offer learning centers, medical and vision clinics, expanded clothing and meal services, addiction rehabilitation, counseling, and physical fitness training opportunities. At our summer camp along the river, a new dining room and 5 new cabins have expanded our capacity to 50 campers per week. There is no question in my mind that God's hand has been on this ministry with great blessing since 1951. Our early founders established strong standards of leadership and financial accountability that have kept the board and staff on course. Albert Aaron's original vision is being carried out in no small part due to his skilled leadership and the integrity of those who followed his lead. What does God have planned for the next 25 years? If it's as exciting as the last 50, I want to be there. So on behalf of the Board of Directors for this year and the past 50 years and Albert Aaron, thanks for all you do, and God bless you.